The classroom was quiet, the kind of tense quiet that carries the weight of anticipation until it didn't. Emily's fingers trembled as she held her notebook tight to her chest, trying to keep herself composed. The teacher, Mr. Harmon, had a reputation for snapping at students who didn't fit his expectations. But today he crossed a line. Emily, one of the brightest students in the class, had asked a question he didn't like. In a flash of anger, he grabbed her notebook and yanked it from her hands, scattering papers across the floor. The laughter of other students mingled with murmurs of shock, but no one dared intervene. Emily bent to pick up her notes, cheeks burning, not just from embarrassment, but from the sting of injustice. Stay with this story until the very end, because what happens next would change everything for the teacher, the class, and Emily herself. She straightened and faced him, trying to remain calm, though every inch of her body screamed. The classroom felt smaller somehow, the walls pressing in as he leaned over her desk, his voice sharp, condescending, dripping with malice. "You think you're better than everyone, don't you?" he snapped. "Maybe you should learn your place." Students flinched, hiding expressions of discomfort behind half-opened books and notebooks. Emily's hands clenched at her sides, not out of fear, but in preparation. She knew that standing up here wasn't just about herself anymore. It was about asserting the respect that no one, regardless of age or authority, had the right to deny. The moment felt suspended in time, but then a subtle sound at the doorway shifted everything. A soft tap of polished shoes against the linoleum, deliberate and measured. Emily glanced up and saw the door open, the office hallway framed behind it, and standing there was a figure whose presence alone made the air heavier. Her father, a federal judge known for fairness and unyielding integrity, had come to check on her after a quick call from the office about the incident. His gaze swept the classroom in one silent, commanding look. The teacher froze mid-gesture, hand still raised, words stuck halfway out of his mouth. The laughter and whispers from the students evaporated like morning mist. Authority had entered the room, but this was a different kind, one that demanded respect without intimidation. Emily's father didn't need to speak at first. His eyes met hers briefly, and she felt a surge of calm. Someone had her back, someone who understood both the power of law and the importance of standing up for what's right. Mr. Harmon faltered. Every insult, every act of aggression, suddenly seemed small and futile under the weight of that presence. The classroom itself seemed to pause, students realizing the magnitude of what was unfolding. This was a moment not just of confrontation, but of reckoning. Emily straightened her posture, letting her father's presence strengthen her. She began calmly gathering her scattered papers, not in haste, not in panic, but deliberately, as if to say, "I am not afraid. I am not ashamed." The teacher's face shifted from anger to confusion, a flicker of fear in his eyes. He had miscalculated entirely. The quiet student in the corner, the one he thought could be easily humiliated, was not alone. And now, his actions would have consequences far beyond what he imagined. From the back of the room, a few students whispered encouragement under their breath. Others dared to lift their heads and watch. Emily spoke finally, her voice steady but firm. "I will not accept being treated unfairly, sir. Not today, not ever." Her father stepped closer, a subtle gesture of support, his gaze never leaving the teacher's. The air in the classroom had changed, tension replaced with accountability. If you want to see more powerful stories of courage and justice, like this video and subscribe to the channel, because moments like these remind us that standing up matters more than staying silent. By the time the bell rang, signaling the end of the class period, Mr. Harmon was pale, fumbling for words, fully aware that his actions had been witnessed, recorded, and judged, not just by Emily's father, but by every student who had watched him falter. Emily walked out, notebook in hand, dignity intact, the weight of fear lifted. That day, she learned a lesson in courage, and the students learned a lesson in respect. And one thing was certain: injustice has no place where the law, integrity, and moral authority converge. The day after the incident, the school hallways felt charged, as if every tile and locker carried the echoes of what had happened. Emily walked past her peers with her backpack slung casually over one shoulder, yet each step was deliberate, measured. She wasn't flaunting her strength, but she was walking with it, and the subtle shift in her posture did not go unnoticed. Whispers followed her, soft yet unavoidable. Some students had heard about the confrontation. Others had pieced together the story from the small fragments of courage Emily had displayed. She felt their eyes on her, but instead of fear or embarrassment, she felt a strange mix of pride and resolve. That morning she knew one truth: the act of standing up for oneself ripples far beyond the moment. Inside her first period classroom, the energy was different. Students shuffled into their seats more quietly than usual, and a few heads turned, scanning the room for the teacher who had tried to assert power inappropriately. Mr. Harmon arrived shortly after, his usual swagger noticeably absent. He carried his books in a tight grip, avoiding eye contact with Emily or any student who might judge him. The principal, having been informed of the prior day's events in full detail, remained nearby, his presence a quiet reminder that boundaries had shifted. No overt confrontation was needed. The accountability had already settled like dust in sunlight, unmistakable and persistent. As the lesson began, Emily noticed subtle acts of solidarity from classmates. A boy passed a piece of paper to her discreetly with a note reading, "You were brave." Another student gave her a nod of quiet respect. These gestures weren't loud or performative, but they spoke volumes. Courage inspires courage. For Emily, it was a confirmation that her calm defiance had not only protected her dignity, but had also reshaped the dynamics in the room. Even students who had never spoken to her seemed emboldened by the knowledge that authority could be challenged with integrity. Midway through class, Mr. Harmon attempted to regain some semblance of control. His tone was clipped, sharper than necessary, yet measured. "Emily, please hand me your assignment," he said, clearly trying to re-establish authority. Emily complied, placing her neatly written paper on his desk without a word. She met his gaze with calm eyes, unyielding, conveying that respect is earned, not demanded. He fumbled slightly, as though her composed response caught him off guard. Every student witnessed the subtle power shift. Authority cannot thrive on fear alone, especially when confronted by reason, composure, and support. By lunch, rumors of the prior day had spread like wildfire. Students lingered in the cafeteria, discussing the incident in hushed tones, analyzing every action and reaction. Emily sat with her closest friends, sharing laughter and normal chatter, projecting an air of normalcy despite the undercurrent of tension. She had learned that courage doesn't always need grand gestures. Sometimes it resides in returning to routine, in showing that the world has not broken your spirit. But even in these ordinary moments, her presence radiated the quiet authority that comes from standing up for oneself without compromise. Later that afternoon, a small group of teachers convened in the staff lounge. The conversation inevitably turned to the previous day's event. They discussed protocols, classroom management strategies, and the subtle ways in which authority must be balanced with fairness. Emily's father had followed up with the principal and the school's legal counsel, ensuring that policy and justice intersected seamlessly. Yet the teachers' conversations were more than administrative. They were reflections on how quickly power could be misused and how courage, even from a student, can serve as a catalyst for systemic improvement. By the end of the day, Emily walked through the quiet hallways toward the library. The shelves seemed almost symbolic, now aisles of knowledge, order and structure, where the misuses of power could be met with awareness and accountability. She gathered a few books for an upcoming project, noting the sunlight streaming through tall windows. The calmness of the space contrasted sharply with the tension of the prior day, but she felt empowered by both experiences. One lesson had been about confrontation, the other about resilience. Both were equally important in shaping her understanding of justice and self-respect. Even as she prepared to leave, she noticed the lingering effects on her peers. Several students were reading more attentively in the library, a newfound seriousness coloring their actions. Conversations that had once been dominated by casual banter now included thoughtful commentary, critical thinking, and reflections on fairness. Emily realized that a single act of standing firm, done with dignity and clarity, had not only changed her day but had initiated a ripple effect across the student body. Courage, she understood, was contagious. As the sun dipped low and students began to leave, the principal approached Emily, offering a small, approving nod. "You handled yourself well," he said quietly. "And I believe your classmates will remember this for a long time." Emily's lips curved into a faint smile, acknowledgement replacing pride. It wasn't about recognition. It was about knowing that integrity had consequences, that standing firm in the face of injustice changes more than just the immediate moment. Finally leaving the school grounds, Emily felt a deep sense of purpose. She had faced intimidation, humiliation, and fear, yet she emerged composed and resolute. The ripple effect was visible in the corridors, the library, and even among the teachers. Every glance, every nod, every whispered acknowledgement confirmed what she already knew: justice doesn't require rage, it requires presence, clarity, and the courage to act. If you want more inspiring stories of strength, courage, and justice, like this video and subscribe to the channel, because real power comes from standing firm, even when the odds are stacked against you. Emily had learned that lesson fully, and the world around her had already begun to reflect it. The following week, the school felt different. Subtly, almost imperceptibly, but the shift was there. Hallways carried a sense of awareness that hadn't existed before. Students walked with a quiet attentiveness, eyes scanning, whispers hushed. The lesson from the prior week had already spread like a current beneath the surface. Standing up with dignity changes the atmosphere. Emily felt it as she moved between classes, a strange sense of quiet power humming in the air. She wasn't seeking attention. She simply carried herself as someone who knew the truth. That respect is earned, and intimidation has limits. Mr. Harmon tried to regain his composure, yet even his demeanor was marked by restraint. Gone was the bravado that had fueled his prior aggression. In its place, there was hesitation, a subtle awareness that actions have consequences, especially in the presence of integrity and authority. Every glance Emily cast in his direction reminded him of the incident, and he knew that students had witnessed it all: the composure, the calmness, the unshakable sense of self she displayed. The balance of power in that classroom had shifted, not through rage or retaliation, but through measured courage. Emily's classes continued as usual, but moments of quiet reflection emerged between lessons. She noticed classmates more carefully now, subtle changes in demeanor, renewed attentiveness, and even students approaching her with small conversations about fairness, justice, and standing up for themselves. It was a ripple effect, and Emily recognized it. Courage isn't solitary, it spreads. Even the students who had never spoken a word now carried a heightened awareness, a recognition that witnessing strength quietly can be just as transformative as experiencing it firsthand. During lunch, Emily's closest friends gathered at their usual table. Yet the conversation drifted from homework and pop culture to discussions about responsibility and integrity. "I didn't know you could handle him like that," one friend admitted, shaking their head. "I would have frozen." Emily smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and calmness washing over her. "I didn't feel like I had a choice," she said simply. "Some things are bigger than embarrassment." The conversation lingered, not boasting, but acknowledging that standing firm sometimes means redefining the rules of what's expected. Meanwhile, the administration quietly reviewed the events, implementing subtle yet meaningful changes. Hall monitors were assigned to blind spots. Teachers received reminders about professional conduct, and students were encouraged to report incidents without fear of reprisal. Emily's father had also spoken with the principal and school legal counsel, ensuring that proper procedures had been followed and that the actions of one teacher would not compromise the safety or dignity of students in the future. This wasn't punishment for the sake of humiliation, it was a recalibration of accountability, a reminder that ethical behavior is non-negotiable. By the third day, the whispers and rumors had fully crystallized into stories that carried lessons rather than gossip. Emily walked through the halls and overheard peers discussing how they might respond if faced with bullying or unfair treatment. They debated quietly, weighing courage against caution, integrity against conformity. She smiled subtly to herself, understanding that these were the seeds of character being planted. Courage isn't about grand displays, It's about planting small, thoughtful actions that grow into lasting change. In class, Mr. Harmon attempted to teach a lesson with renewed caution. He spoke carefully, perhaps even apologetically at times, as though aware that every word now carried weight beyond mere instruction. Emily participated fully, engaging with the material, asking questions, and contributing to discussions. Her confidence radiated, not arrogance but presence. The classroom had transformed. What was once a space of intimidation was now a place where authority was tempered with respect, and where students quietly recognized the balance of power shifting in subtle yet undeniable ways. Later, after school, Emily lingered in the library. The quiet space was a sanctuary now, a symbol of stability and order. She organized books for a project, arranging them neatly on the shelves, grounding herself in the calm of knowledge. The sunlight streamed through tall windows, highlighting dust motes drifting like tiny stars. Each movement was deliberate, measured, a reflection of the internal equilibrium she had cultivated. It wasn't about triumph or revenge. It was about reclaiming space, dignity, and presence. The library was hers, in a sense, because she had stood for what was right. Her father called that evening, asking about the week. Emily recounted events with calm precision, changes in the classroom atmosphere, shifts in student behavior, and even subtle signs that Mr. Harmon had begun to reflect on his conduct. Her father's pride was palpable, but Emily remained humble. "It's not about me," she said quietly. "It's about setting the standard. Everyone deserves respect." The call ended with warmth, but Emily sat back, realizing that courage had long-lasting effects beyond the immediate confrontation. The ripple would continue, through students, faculty, and perhaps even the teacher who had misjudged her resolve. By the weekend, the school had fully returned to routine, but with a new undertone. Students walked taller, teachers spoke with careful consideration, and Emily carried herself with quiet authority. She knew that true power doesn't need to be demonstrated with force. It manifests in calm composure, in fairness, and in unwavering integrity. That week had shown her that standing up, even when alone, creates change that cannot be ignored. It is felt, absorbed, and eventually respected. As Emily closed her notebook that Friday evening and looked out over the school grounds, she understood a fundamental truth. Courage is not an isolated act. It is a series of choices, small yet deliberate, that influence everything around them. The hallways, classrooms, and even hearts of those who had witnessed her resilience had been altered. The teacher had learned that intimidation cannot thrive where integrity stands unwavering, and Emily had learned that presence, calmness, and strength are inseparable allies. If you're inspired by Emily's courage and want more empowering stories of integrity and standing up for what's right, like this video and subscribe to the channel, because true bravery is quiet, consistent, and transformative. Emily walked the halls with quiet strength, the students and teachers watching her calm courage reshape the atmosphere. Mr. Harmon, humbled, realized respect can't be forced. Integrity won. Emily's father smiled from afar. Like and subscribe for more inspiring stories of bravery and justice.